Hello everyone, welcome to Winthrop in the World. I'm Paul Baskin, and with us today is Matthew Nash. Matthew, thank you for coming. Matthew is the Visitor Services Supervisor at the North Region Coastal District of the Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation, the DCR. In short, Matthew is the people I think a lot of people know around town as the guy who leads a lot of the nature programs along the coast for children and adults. What do you like, Matthew? Well, first of all, thank you for coming. And how long have you been doing this here in town? And maybe a quick explanation of what it is you do.
Yeah, so thank you, Paul, for inviting me to talk today. So I've been here roughly about 15 years of my 27-year plus career, doing nature programs for children and adults. Our birding program's very popular, as well as our seal watching programs.
Right.
And I'm also offer some mindfulness programs. We're going to have a sunrise meditation program on Short Beach this fall.
Yeah, no, I've seen some of
Yes.
those. Some of them, as people may know, are quite early. So you do like at 6 a.m. in cold
well,
weather.
6:45 a.m. for the sunrise programs.
Yeah.
But I'm told that area already naturally attracts people, and it would be a good opportunity to offer a little bit more to give a greater appreciation for the beautiful sunrise we have over the ocean here.
Right. So Matthew, I think a lot of people think of you as a real treasure here in town because of what you do for this town in terms of, like you said, education and for just general good vibes of Winthrop, what it actually means to be Winthrop. Can you maybe start out by telling people, I guess you're from the greater Boston area.
Correct.
How'd you get on the pathway? Where did you go to school? What led you to this career?
So I went to UMass Amherst. I have a bachelor's and master's degree in plant biology from there, which is called botany.
Okay.
And went also to the University of Alberta, didn't finish the PhD, came home looking for a job. And I was on a New Year's Day hike on the Boston Harbor Islands.
Okay.
And I was very enamored by the location on Thompson Island. And the tour leader, he was a volunteer for the Friends of Boston Harbor Islands. And I said, Charlie, how do you do this for free? How do I get a job doing what you're doing? And he recommended I write to people in the state government. And I got a seasonal position out on George's Island, giving some tide pool programs as well as history tours. And that's where my interest in history developed.
Right.
And then so I applied for work, got a seasonal job with one agency, what was the MDC at the time.
Right.
And then an opportunity came out at Camp Nyan in Saugus.
Okay.
It was an environmental education center, doing mostly school nature programming.
Right.
And then there was the Beaches Commission, and there was an opportunity here, and I had just finished doing a coastal education program for high school students as part of the Massachusetts Envirothon.
Right.
So there was this stimulated interest in the coast, and it was a stimulation of a childhood interest because one of my high school teachers is actually teaches marine biology at Harvard Extension, and also was teaching at our high school at the time.
Right. So how did Winthrop get you? I mean, can't stress enough for people who don't know. You're all around town. It seems like giving all kinds of programs on the marine environment, and I see children going to it and really enjoying it. I see older adults going to it and really enjoying it. It's quite a thing for the town. I mean, how did you end up in Winthrop doing it?
Well, it's part of my jurisdiction in the North Region Coastal District. Winthrop is one of the communities, and they're a very vibrant and wonderful, welcoming community.
Right.
So it's nice to give programs here, and there's also an interest that people are interested in the tide pool and the seals and the birding programs.
Right.
But it is part of my jurisdiction, including Revere Beach, Belle Isle Marsh,
Right.
and East Boston. So that's what brought me here, was the whole Beaches Commission, which included providing nature education opportunities in the parks.
Right. So do you have connections? I think we talked earlier about connections with the school system. Do you have formal connections with the school system here in Winthrop, or how does that work exactly?
Well, in the past, I gave quite a number of programs in the fall and spring, but that has dropped off recently, mostly I think because of transportation issues of the school. Funding for transportation seems to be an issue for them.
I see. So what did it look like before? You would
They would
students-
actually walk.
Uh-huh.
They would walk like a mile and a half
Uh-huh.
with the students from the elementary schools.
Wow. Okay. And that
Yeah.
and that just sort of has fallen
Yeah, that's
away.
fallen by the wayside for now.
But how many programs a year do you do in Winthrop? Roughly.
Ah.
Roughly.
Well, I have a large area. That's hard to think. So about 30 programs a year here,
Uh-huh. Okay. 30. Okay. And then some of them.
because I'm also giving programs in East Boston and other parks in the region.
So one that I remember seeing fairly recently was what you call tide pool. So that was in the Winthrop Beach area. And the tide pool, as I understand it, is when the tide goes back out, it leaves little pondish things, right? Is that, maybe you can use a better term for it than me?
Well,
but-
it's actually a window into the ocean world. These are ocean creatures
right.
that get trapped in a smaller body of water as the ocean water is pulled out by the sun and the moon.
Right. Okay.
And so you're seeing these ocean creatures in this small microcosm of the ocean. So you're seeing the wonders of the ocean without having to put on a scuba tank and snorkel gear.
Right. Right. And what do you tell the children when they're seeing that? I mean, there's only so much that the children can absorb in a sitting or a standing, if you will. Right?
Well, the most important thing is the ethos of being there, to respecting this as the home for these animals and being careful when they handle the animals, but also a little bit about them in terms of how they are connected through food chains, who eats who, basically.
Right. Right. Okay. And the adults. I know I've seen a birding program.
Yes.
What else well, let me talk about the birding program. First of all, how many birds are there to possibly see? I mean, from a layman's eyes, it doesn't seem to be.
Upwards
Yeah.
of 267 plus in the area. That includes the species that come through, not that are living here year round, but that come through.
Right. Okay. And do you show these year round and kind of?
Yes, this is year round birding programs. The
tip-
tide pool is more seasonal, but yeah, the birding's year round on Winthrop Beach and East Boston. And I'll be also migrating to Lynn and Nahart because there's been an interest there to expand.
I see. And so the tide pools are seasonal because of why?
Because of the weather. And then
see.
it's for safety reasons too with weather. We're not
Right.
getting nor'easters and stuff. And I don't think people would be like being up to their knees in water
Right.
out in the cold.
Right. Whereas the birding, you stay on the beach and
Yeah,
kind
you're
of
on
look
the
out.
beach, yeah.
Okay. What are you trying to do? I guess maybe what kind of messages are you trying to? You talked a little bit about respect for animals. That's one of them. But is there any other kind of message you're hoping to impart to people other than just the sheer enjoyment of the moment?
Yes, to really feel connected to these resources of these animals and the place.
Right.
I like to quote Mary Oliver,
Okay.
Instructions for Living a Life.
Okay.
Pay attention, be astonished, and tell about it.
Mm-hmm.
So if people are spend the time to pay attention with their intellect, with their emotions, with their senses, the idea is that they would become to a greater appreciation and respect for these natural resources, for the birds, for the ocean life, the snails, and the clams, and really come to see their place as part of that natural environment.
What are you looking for? What would you expect then? I mean, what would you say? So if someone goes to your program and sort of absorbs the message you're trying to
Okay.
deliver, and they go back home, is there something you might hope or think that they might do differently as a result of the knowledge and experience you've given them?
Yes, I would like them to come back to more programs, to invite others to come to the programs. And then we're at home, think about things like, well, am I going to throw these apple peelings away or am I going to compost them?
Right.
Am I going to leave the light on all night or am I going to shut it off? Small things like that.
Right. But you're not directly asking that.
No,
You're
I'm
saying,
not directly asking that.
Yeah.
Unless they've been through a whole series on my mindfulness series. One of them is more probing of how people can take responsibility. But no, it's more as a nudge, and that they come back also to do volunteer work in the parks, like beach cleanups, maybe planting trees.
Right, right. So I know it's no surprise to you, but the issue of the piping plovers and I guess the least tern is the name of another
Yes.
bird. Obviously, those are blocked off areas of the beach every summer here in Winthrop, and most people I think seem to understand why. But there's also we hear talk about we hear talk about that and sort of some pushback on that. I realize that's not specifically your educational purpose, but what do you think when you see that and hear that? Is there something you could tell people why, for instance, why that's worth doing? Why we're blocking off part of our beach? What does it matter to us whether the piping plover exists or not?
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought them up, because that's part of what we want. Part of that greater respect for nature is the piping plovers that are nesting on the beach. So we have families, and we care and protect our families. These birds are doing the same thing on the beach, and they don't have another option. Those piping plovers are part of the beauty and majesty of the earth and what is here, in part for our pleasure and enjoyment, and also part of our health, of emotional health and well-being, being with nature, observing nature, and all the benefits that come from that. And just realizing, I'm going to partially quote Brian Harrington, he's a shorebird ecologist, of just like we revere a Rembrandt or a Picasso in a museum, these things, these birds are their own work of art that we should come to understand and love. And we can only love them if we're experiencing them. So that's why we have the bird watching programs, for people to really experience, maybe watch some of the interesting behaviors, like the piping plover male will do this high step dance for the female, and it's, or he'll do a figure-8 flight around his territory in early spring, and just to enjoy that. But I get it. I have empathy for the people. I mean, it's their beach also. But perhaps they can think about this as kind of like a timeshare. We have our time on the beach, and then the piping plover. And it isn't just for we share, when the piping plovers are there, we still share the beach. It's just it's restricted of no dogs on the beach. But still think of that time when no dogs on the beach. It's kind of like a timeshare. This is the time for the plover, predominantly the plovers, and then we have a time for the people. Because people visiting the beach are it's very important that people enjoy the beach and use it. The reason with the dogs off beach, those regulations were there a long time before,
the plovers came along.
So we're unsure if the plovers were ever on Winthrop Beach in the past or not. But assuming they are new arrivals. Even if that's the case, the dog regulations, that was for public health, for beach bathing season. That's why it was originally there. We've adapted and extended a little bit on the margins because of the plovers. But it's really about human enjoyment and human public health that we have those restrictions as well. And that's been a long time, irregardless of whether the plovers were there before.
How do you think people of Winthrop, and maybe people more widely, are doing on that level of understanding and acceptance? Do you see any sort of trend line in where it's going? I'm thinking, for instance, you even foreshadowed there was a town council meeting not too long ago where one of the members of the town council suggested that the plovers are not indigenous to Winthrop, and that somehow made a difference.
I think that question is best answered by our executive team, like our commissioner's office or our shorebird biologists, who have more of those day-to-day interactions and observations of how people are reacting on the beach. My emphasis is more the educational programming. So I think they could best answer that.
No, I meant in terms of what you're hearing people sort of saying, or just from your observations of where things seem to be going. I mean, whether you talk about maybe the 60s being a moment of or 70s actually more of environmental awareness. Do you have a take as to where we are on that sort of continuum?
Well, it depends on who's talking. I mean, there are people that are like oh, wow, this is wonderful. Thank you for the job you're doing. You know, I love, because at the Revere Beach Sand Sculpting Festival, we actually have people come out to see the birds.
Right.
And see them on the beach. And
Okay.
people are like, oh, thank you. You know, we have piping plovers on our beach, and, you know, this is the first opportunity I had to see them.
Right.
And this is from people from other states even saying this.
Right.
But then there's the people that just, you know, and I have empathy for them, where they just don't like the birds being there. And even though the symbolic fencing is very aesthetic with the thin poles,
right.
they feel a sense of, I don't know what they feel a sense
Right,
of,
no, I hear
but
you.
there's a struggle.
I don't keep on this too long, but I also think about one of the big issues that this town is facing, which is the sea level shift.
Yes.
Do you address that at all, or is that either directly or indirectly? And is there any way in which what you're doing can sort of help people understand the situation we are in as a town, country, world, in terms of what's coming?
I cannot speak to the policy of the DCR, what they're doing on larger efforts.
Sure.
Again, we have a whole department that works with that and talks about that. But yes, certainly on our programs, not every time, because we don't want, you know, we have a lot of repeat visitors on the programs. But we'll interject that, yes, you know, we have this beautiful resource, but it's under threat from sea level rise.
Right.
And we have to start doing, you know, taking steps for that.
Right.
But in terms of what steps the DCR is doing, that's best answered by like our head office.
Yeah. What about the children? What do you see, you know, in terms of what are they asking you, for instance? What are you learning from them, and what do you think they're learning from you? I mean, you talked already about sort of the appreciation for nature. I understand that, but is there anything else you can sort of share in terms of maybe stories you hear from them or moments you have with them that sort of tell you what they're getting from it and what you're getting from them?
I would say more from their reactions.
Yeah.
Like, you know, they're picking up a crab and they're like, there's this caution of picking up a crab that may pinch them.
Right.
And just they become quite confident at not having that fear of handling a crab, for instance.
Right.
In terms of the larger ethos, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's not.
In terms of an ethos shift, I mean, children have a natural curiosity and wonder, I see, and you can see that in their faces and things, and yeah, they're very enthusiastic.
So the seals, I know the seals are a tricky one, right? Because they
Well,
come at certain times.
That I can talk about the children, but sorry, I interrupted. You didn't finish yet.
Well, I'm just asking the seals. I know from experience that when the seals are not on a schedule, they show up when they show up. There's a certain time of year when they do it, and there's a certain location where where they prefer to do it. And it sounds like that's a less of a scheduled event. You almost sort of send out kind of have a text blast that's sent out. One is maybe people might want to know. I know we're not coming up on seal season, but maybe you could tell them how to get in on that notification when it happens, and how it happens, and why it's important to do.
Yes, and that speaks to the strength of our partnerships. One of our partnerships is the Friends of Winthrop Beaches.
Right.
And I may have misquoted. Maybe I forget if it's singular or plural. Friends of Winthrop Beach or Friends of Winthrop Beaches. But they're a great partnership. They will advertise that morning. I mean, seals are like us. They don't like the really cold weather outside. It's actually warmer in the water if they stay in the water. But what they do is they come out of the water onto rocks. And because they're really made to swim in the water and not walk around on land, they kind of do this glumping.
Right.
They're, you know, using their flippers and kind of their chest and belly to kind of like flop onto the rock.
Right.
I haven't seen this yet, but some will actually, just before the tide goes out, will swim over the rock and wait for the tide to gently drop them on the rock.
Yeah.
So, but we have seen them doing the glumping.
Yeah.
There'll be one seal and another one, and then we see these interactions of they'll like scratch in the air. That's actually aggressive because another seal got too close.
Okay.
But yeah, why come out here? Well, people look and they don't see anything. They say, all I see is a rock. All I see is a rock. And then all of a sudden I say, well, realize that that spotting scope, you're seeing a lot of distance and a lot
Yeah.
area, and then they'll go, ah, I saw the seal. Sorry.
Right.
Yeah.
No, no, it's good. I think I just want to tell people where you're talking about. So at least the time I was there, it was on sort of the border between Winthrop and Revere, and you set up a few telescopes there, but you're looking at a location a good bit north of that, right? And maybe you can explain what you're doing, why that
Yeah.
location, and why that distance.
Yeah, so that location is because it's where the seals regularly come onto the rocks. It's called hauling out.
Okay.
They don't come onto the jetty itself, but in front of that jetty are some large rocks in the water that they come out on.
Right.
And that's a good spot to see them. And it's also 150 feet, more than 150 feet, which is the distance
Right.
that you should keep away from a seal because it stresses them if you get closer than that.
Right.
And this is a very important time for them to be out on the rock. They pick warmer days to really help with their temperature regulation.
Right. Okay.
And to rest.
Right. Right. And they're migrating, is that right?
No,
They're not. Okay.
they're just, it's what they do. They come out to rest on the rock. It's part of the temperature regulation. So that's why if you had a really frigid day, they wouldn't come out.
No, what I meant by that was I thought there's a time of year when they're here, which I guess I took that to mean that there's a time of year when they're somewhere else. So maybe if you could help.
I talked to the locals here in Winthrop, and they say they see seals all year long. And we
Okay.
have the harbor seal and the gray seal
Okay.
that you can see all year long.
I see.
It's just this behavior of them coming so close to shore.
I see.
So if you were out on some remote island like the outer Boston Harbor Islands, they would do that year round.
Okay.
But because we're closer to shore where there's more humans,
Right.
as it gets warmer, more boats, more
Right.
people walking out on that jetty, which, by the way, I don't recommend people walk out there in the winter. One, for their safety of maybe tripping on ice and falling in the ocean,
Right.
but also I've actually saw people walking out during my seal viewing,
Right.
and it's disturbed some of the seals where they go back in the water.
Right.
This is a very important time for the seals to rest and
Right.
to just maintain their
And
temperature.
by this important time, it's not now, right? It's in the spring. Is that right? When it's generally?
So when we see them is around end of November through
Okay.
the end of April, early May.
Oh, I see. So we're coming up. We're not there now.
Yeah, but end of November I'll start doing that. You can see me on the side of the road on Winthrop Parkway,
Then. Right.
not too far from Short Beach.
Right. Right. Is there other parts of town, or is that the primary area?
That's the one I do now, but I will be expanding to other parks.
Right.
Yeah.
And you talked about the mindfulness program. So that's starting up. Is that something you haven't done much yet of?
No, I've done it fairly regularly, once or twice a month, from spring through late fall.
Okay.
But that hasn't really got the attention I would hope.
Right. Well,
I mean,
it's early. I think
yeah.
you're scheduling at like 6 a.m.
No,
Okay.
because of parking at like 10:15.
Okay.
and
All right.
things.
Later. Got it.
Yeah, so I think part of it is promoting it. Maybe we get some more people as this is, after this airs.
Okay.
Hopefully. I mean, it's an excellent program.
So
It's one that I'd feel comfortable giving to anyone.
it's on Winthrop Beach, the main Winthrop Beach.
Yeah,
or-
there's one on Winthrop Beach, some on Revere Beach, and also Lynn and Nahant.
And so maybe tell people what mindfulness, as I understand it, means sort of sitting and quietly contemplating, I guess. Is that what does it, maybe describe what it is you're actually doing it's an hour? Is it an hour long program?
Yeah, it's about a 90 to 90 minutes,
Okay.
depending on how many people show up. It's I'll give you my formula, but I think Mary Oliver expresses it the best. Again, instructions for living a life. Pay attention.
Right.
So people are paying attention during the program with their senses, what they see, what they touch, maybe what their skin is feeling if we're emphasizing air or wind.
Sure.
Be astonished. There's opportunity for close observation
Of
whatever we're looking at. If the topic is trees that day, they're closely observing on their own the trees.
okay.
Or it could be the wind. I also have it on the wind, or what traditionally has been called the four elements that goes back to the Greeks and the ancients
Right.
of the air, earth, fire, and water.
Sure. Yeah.
But it's observing also the living and non-living parts. So you're being astonished by it, and you're reflecting upon it. Like, what how do I feel at this moment as I'm watching, looking at the tree?
Yeah, yeah.
And then tell about it. So at the end of the program, I have, well, towards the end, not at the very end, people share what they've done on their own self-reflection. It's a guided self-reflection. I also have one on gulls that works the same formula.
Okay. On seagulls?
Yeah, on seagulls.
So
but there's several that come through the winter. There's 3 that are here year-round.
Right. Okay. 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 And this is kind of an all ages event?
This is more for teens and adults.
Teens and adults. Gotcha.
I've tried it with much younger, but they're more interested in digging in the sand, I find.
Yeah. Anything you can say about what you do in Winthrop that's different maybe than what you do in other towns? Is there particular preferences here that you see, or lack of preferences that you see here?
Well, the seals, it's on the Revere-Winthrop border, and that
Right.
attracts people from all around,
Right.
because they're driving through, or when they see the post. But the bird life is especially exceptional.
Here.
Yes, at the Winthrop Beach.
Yeah.
And yeah, because there's the seaweed washes up on the beach,
Right.
and in amongst all that seaweed are these little creatures, like
Right.
little shrimp-like animals,
Right.
and worms and beetles and spiders.
Right.
Depending on which shorebird you are, you're
Right.
eating different things that are among the seaweed.
Right.
So because of that seaweed washing up,
Right.
it is actually very helpful for the birds.
It's interesting you say that because as with the plovers, the seaweed is another issue.
Yes, that's
contention.
why I kind of hesitated when I brought it up.
No,
Yeah.
I understand. These can be difficult topics, but I mean,
Yes,
I think
it
it's.
is.
I mean, I just want to hear you on it. I mean, so I mean, I think people have been complaining about it because the seaweed is unsightly in some people's minds. It can smell, and it was attracting some kind of flies, I guess, gathered this summer. Is that anything you've sort of noticed, and does it seem like anything's any really different lately? And what, if anything, should be
No
done
one's
about
brought it up to me, but I'm aware of that. Yeah, there is some tension over the seaweed being on the beach, and
Right.
some people don't like it in terms of, but so we have, yeah, that's, I think, again, better discussed by our more central office in
Right.
terms of what we're doing for public discussion. and things
No, I
like
understand that, but I just, in terms of your just general sense of it being sort of, it's a natural phenomenon, or is it somehow being accelerated lately by anything that you know of?
No, that I don't know.
Yeah.
That I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, again, I want to thank you. I'm Matthew Nash. You're the long title. I know you as basically our local Marine Ranger, but your title, Visitor Services Supervisor at the North Region's Coastal District, the Massachusetts Department of Conservation
You got it.
and Recreation. Thank you so much for taking the time today.
Yeah, and thank you for inviting me, Paul. It was a pleasure.